Songbirds are the only birds that truly sing. They make up half of the world's birds, about 5,000 species, from the lark to the swallow to the tit. And they are absolutely vital to the health of the planet. From pollinating flowers to regenerating forests to protecting plants against unwanted pests. Without songbirds, our complex ecosystems would be unrecognizable to us today. And yet, incredibly, many of these birds are disappearing from every corner of the globe. Songbird populations have plummeted by half in just 60 years. The greatest decline in human history. But is this deadly downward curve irreversible? Or will science help us to save the songbirds before the skies fall silent?
Boreal forest in the winter is a pretty quiet place. And that's because it's a very cold place and it's a very difficult place to survive. But come spring, the temperatures warm up, we have a lot of moisture, we have a lot of vegetation. It's a huge ecosystem. And birds from all over will migrate from as far south as Costa Rica and South America, from Mexico, Texas, and billions of birds come every year to the boreal forest as a place to breed, raise young, and then to start the trip back to south again.
Around 7 billion birds breed in the boreal forest every year, the largest phenomenon of its kind in the world. Millions of them are songbirds. And when songbirds breed, they sing.
Right now I hear a least flycatcher, Tennessee warbler, a yellow warbler over there. It's an amazing thing to wake up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and hear the vast number of individuals singing. But they're actually not doing it for fun. They're actually doing it for two major reasons. One, they're trying to attract, the males are trying to attract a female. And the power of your song, the quality of your song, how long you can do it, that kind of gives the female a perception of how tough or macho or cool you are. Every other male is trying to set themselves up to have space to breed for the year. And so they're using their song to defend their space. So rather than fight about it continually physically and interact physically, they sing it out kind of thing.
The springtime breeding ritual is an integral part of the songbird's natural cycle, and a crucial time of the year for scientists to gauge how songbird populations are faring. Yet even here, in the world's largest bird nursery, biologists like Erin Bain are witnessing a troubling trend.
Well, a point count is the primary tool we use to count birds. Because birds sing, it's really quite easy to stand outside and listen for them. And what we're able to do is document, where is the bird and kind of what habitat, how far away is it approximately, and, at what time did it sing. And we use that information to estimate how many birds there are in any given piece of forest.
And what Bain is discovering is that there are less songbirds in the boreal forest every year. Once abundant species are literally disappearing from the landscape. And it's not just a problem for birds in the boreal. Similar bird counts all over the world are telling the same story.
7 barred swallows. 7 barred swallows.
Oh, bobolink?
What is happening to songbirds? Why are fewer and fewer of them returning every spring? The answers to these questions are as difficult to pin down as the birds themselves. They are amongst the most mobile creatures on Earth, capable of flying thousands of kilometers from northern to southern latitudes and back. Their migration is an evolutionary response to harsh winters and scarce food resources. But does this very instinct to survive somehow make them more vulnerable to decline? At the end of the summer, songbirds begin their annual migration south, following the same paths their ancestors have flown for thousands of years.
Aristotle
thought that swallows burrowed under the mud during winter. Obviously, swallows don't spend the winter in mud, but we don't know much more than that. We still don't know where they spend the winter. We don't know what they do the rest of the year. How long they live or where they die. These are the big questions about bird migration. We can only answer by estimating how many songbirds there are in total. Our best estimate is that there are 20 billion songbirds. About half of them die because only half come back from migration each year. That means 10 billion individual songbirds die every year.
What dangers are songbirds facing along these voyages? Where and when? By following the birds, scientists are slowly piecing together the puzzle. But songbirds are small and elusive, and much of their migration is completely invisible to the human eye, because it happens at night.
The departure seems to happen about a half an hour after sunset. And the reason we think they migrate at night, these are small songbirds and there's larger birds that will eat them. If they fly during the day, they're vulnerable.
Instead of tracking birds visually, researcher Bill Evans has spent decades perfecting a technique to follow their sound.
A lot of songbirds give these little flight calls, which we think are for air traffic control to prevent collisions. It's dark, they can't see each other. There's millions of them moving. There's something incredible about hearing birds going over and you know that they've come from South America and you're in Minnesota at the time or you're in New York. And just this steady flow. When you get a big night, it's just zip, zip, zip. The first step was to figure out a way to record these calls coming down. This is a hearing aid microphone element, and they're quite small. I found out that this was one of the cheapest, most efficient ways to actually record the avian night flight calls. The old microphone design, back from the mid-90s on, used a dinner plate and a flower pot. This microphone that I'm building today is a little more sophisticated. Back Back in 1985, I started to begin recording these avian night flight calls. I immediately went out and looked for the cheapest way to record a long period of time, and that turned out to be with a Hi-Fi VCR. This is the very first one that I bought, and it was $1,000 at the time. I used to just listen to these with the headphones for hours and hours. I would sit and listen to these tapes, and that was one of the ways I pieced together this jigsaw puzzle of the identities of a lot of these calls. Each morning I come, first thing I'll do is I'll go through and separate manually all the false detections, and then it'll look something like this, where I have these little signals. And each one of these is maybe 1/10 to 1/20 of a second long. So once I get the calls, what I do is figuring out the identity, the species that gives many of these calls. So in a case like this, we have this modulated sound that goes up and down. That means the frequency goes up, comes back down. So this sound is something like this. You hear it, and your ear can't really resolve this modulation. But when you make these spectrograms, it allows you to see the details of the sound in a way that your ear can't really discriminate.
What is this one?
Zeep.
Zeep.
I mean, really.
It's almost Cape May-ish, but... that's a Cape May.
yeah.
Wait a minute, that can't be a Cape May. That's that?
Nope.
We've had a number of species disappear from this region of North America. Loggerhead shrike has disappeared. I don't think we really know why they've disappeared. So what I can do is document what's here now.
Even the smallest songbird can travel amazing distances, from the northern tundras to the southern rainforests. Some can even cross entire oceans and travel 1,000 kilometers in just one night. Their little wings will flap 600 times a minute. But at some point, they must stop to rest. And that's where they come face to face with an old enemy.
When you talk to cat people, they say, my cat doesn't kill any birds. Well, you know, that's actually possible. But some cats actually kill a lot of birds. You know, 1, 2, 3, 5 a week, one every day.
Cats are only following instinct. They're natural-born predators. And for every loved cat, there are almost as many homeless. The numbers of abandoned pets and feral colonies are growing.
In the U.S. alone, we think there are about 80 million owned cats. As far as feral cats go, in the U.S., we think there's somewhere between 30 and 80 million.
Even a modest estimate of the number of birds killed by cats is startling.
If you use the smallest number of cats that are let outside, if you use the smallest number of birds that are thought to be killed by cats, we came up with a conservative estimate of 1.4 billion birds killed by cats per year. There are at least 32 species of birds that are known to have been caused to go extinct at the paws of cats. Cats have been around and part of human civilization for a long time. That said, it doesn't mean that they have been moved to places where they are natural components to these fragile ecosystems. They're just not. They're as invasive as kudzu vines or zebra mussels. They are not natural components of the environment anywhere. Humans are ultimately the issue here.
By encouraging outdoor cats to flourish, we are devastating songbird populations.
We've got a conundrum. We've got a real issue that we've got to deal with. We can't continue to allow cats to change the population size of wildlife.
As songbirds continue south, their numbers dwindle. Scientists need to know as much as possible about the health of bird populations as they journey on.
Well, if you go back in history, all the knowledge we got from birds was done by killing them. They used to shoot them, collect them, and then examine them. And the advent of banding meant that you could get the same information and even more and still release the bird alive and well back into the wild.
How many birds pass through here each fall? Which species are they? And what shape are they in? These are critical questions for scientists studying migration and songbird declines. For the last 100 years, bird banding has been the main way of determining the answers. Captured birds are weighed and measured, and this information is recorded. The bird is then banded with a small metallic ring so that if it's recaptured, its data can be recovered.
The ring number is HA 200.
One of the standard tests performed on migrating birds is the fat check.
Okay, I'm going to check for the fat now.
The more fat a songbird has, the more likely it will reach its final destination.
This bird has got no fat, 0. Okay, you can go. This bird will probably stay here and feed for 2, maybe 3 days and stock up on a little bit of fat to enable it to complete the journey.
The further a songbird flies, the more fuel they need to keep going. Songbirds are hormonally programmed to turn into super-eaters before and during migration. Some will literally double their body weight. But as scientists are discovering, this insatiable appetite can come at a price.
So the ortolan bunting is a small bird that looks like a sparrow. It used to be a common bird, but there's been a sudden decline over the past 30 or 40 years. Like all the trans-Saharan migrants, it will stock up a lot of reserves, accumulate fat under its skin. This allows it to do these long flights to Africa.
Every year, thousands of tiny ortolan buntings migrate over this part of southern France. They come from as far away as Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, stopping every year before making the long voyage to their wintering grounds in sub-Saharan Africa. Local inhabitants await their arrival with anticipation and an appetite.
Alors là, mon ortolan, il est cuit, bien doré, magnifique. Mmh. Mmh. Rien à dire. Oh, regarde le bon coup.
Donc moi je remets un tout petit peu d'armagnac.
I inject a little bit of Armagnac, then I cook them for 11 minutes in tin foil on maximum heat. You put one in your mouth and it just melts. The bones, everything melts. It's exceptional. Makes my mouth water.
Oui.
We learned from our fathers and our grandfathers. Ever since we were kids, hunting's been our main activity. These birds are decoys. They were captured last year or in the past few years. They're singers. They sing when they see other birds. One or two of them yodel. It's their mating song. It goes like this.
Ce sera comme ça, là, ça fait partie des trucs. L'oiseau vient.
The bird comes over, attracted by the grains. He gets closer. He touches this part, and the trap falls on him. It's a trap that doesn't harm him. And then we come. If it's an ortolan, we take it. If it's not, we let it go.
Let's take a quick look. We should be seeing some snipe, a group of mallards. Long ago, the big animals, the noble animals, deer, boar, were reserved for the aristocracy. And all the small animals, including small birds, were left to the people. Hunting as we know it is the very definition of sustainable hunting, maybe even of sustainable development. It's simple. A hunter, in order to hunt, needs game. And for there to be game, you need protected spaces.
The people's right to hunt and eat the ortolan was even written into law by Napoleon. But since then, circumstances have changed.
We're in a situation where the species is on the red list in many countries. In France, the nesting population should be in danger of extinction on the red list. There are definitely still some left, but we have a rate of decline that is very fast and very high and very alarming.
In 1999, the European Union banned ortolan hunting. But local hunters continue the practice while French authorities turn a blind eye. Now, Les Landes has turned into a battle zone between those who want to continue hunting and those who want to stop them.
So we're almost there. As soon as we stop the car, we jump off and hide in the maize so that they have the time to leave. Be able to see the birds in the cages. We'll take some picture. Shit, what's that? Last year there was this tolerance. They could keep 5 decoys, 30 traps, and they could catch up to 20 birds per year. We have to prove that there is still a tolerance policy here.
Evidence of trapping sites will be submitted to the European Union in an attempt to end France's tolerance of illegal hunting.
We know many trapping sites. We have made research and different ways to locate these trapping sites. Then we check them on the ground. We don't know how many. We know that it's more than 200 and less than 1,500. If each place captures, every year catches, let's say 10 or 20 ortolans, we're talking about the entire breeding population of Central Europe, which is slaughtered here. What we cannot accept is that we leave the prisoners in the cages. So next days we'll have to do that. And of course the situation will grow more dangerous.
Écoute-moi, ici, écoute-moi. Attendez, alors, le jour que vous arriverez, ça les oreilles, moi je vous les coupe en point. Je t'avais averti qu'avec nous, t'aurais pas de problème. Mais à un moment donné, à force de jouer au con.
From the beginning, it's always clear to all of us that we will have to face danger. I'm here because I care for birds, for ortolans in this case, and I will not step back.
I'd be furious. You'd have to put me in prison to stop me from hunting. I'm serious. These birds are everything to me. They're my entertainment.
You cannot defend a tradition which is not sustainable anymore. Many of the trapping sites are abandoned now because they cannot catch. I hear rumors that people catch one ortolan in one season. So if ortolans disappear from this migration route, there will be no tradition. And a tradition is not something that must be kept alive at any cost.
An estimated 30,000 ortolans are captured every year in Leland. Just a small portion of the nearly million songbirds hunted in Europe alone.
Bird navigation is one of the most mysterious subjects. Birds learn an enormous amount when they migrate. We know that after migration, a migratory bird's brain has grown, the part associated with spatial memory. To find their way, animals need to use the sunset angle as an absolute reference for the west. They use that to estimate where the north is. With this system, this compass system, they can still be guided at night by the magnetic field and find their way in the dark.
Songbirds have been honing their navigational tools for thousands of years. But suddenly, the world beneath their wings has changed. Cities are strange obstacles for songbirds. Their very constructions are a labyrinth of incomprehensible dangers.
Birds do not perceive glass. What they're seeing is the reflection of the environment that they're in, or they're seeing what would be a clear passage to something on the other side of that transparent glass. They see that mirror reflection as the real thing, and they will fly toward it, and in the anticipation that they can land. These birds that we pick up, they're insectivorous species. They're foraging the trees for insects to replenish their reserves from migrating the night before. And it's a feeding frenzy. And as a result, there are mornings where we can pick up hundreds of birds at a single structure because of this. So it's a very hazardous environment for these birds.
20 years ago, an army of volunteers began patrolling city streets, and the Fatal Light Awareness Program was formed.
It's a warbler. He's hit the window.
The more natural the environment, the greater the threat. One of our records for daytime is over 500 birds over a 6-hour period at just 2 structures. And you can stand at the base of these structures and you just catch the birds as they're falling. You can bend down and pick up a bird and 2 have fallen on your back. It can be chaotic.
Volunteers collect and record birds killed by flying into buildings. Injured birds are assessed rehabilitated, and released back into the wild.
So the bird has no palpable fractures, so that's good. It's in great body condition. But we have a small scratch on each cornea, so we have an ulcer starting, so we've done some eye medication. So we're gonna put him here in his hospital bin for recovery, and he'll receive pain medications and eye medications twice a day. Okay, so we have 2 good to go. So we have the black and white warbler. He came in on the 13th, and then the other one is a common yellow throat 3575, and he's Wellington and John. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow.
And we will. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Julia. The good days, you can start them off really bad. You can have 10 or 20 dead birds, one after the other, and you fund one live. And that one live you get to release. And that just completely makes the day for you. It truly does.
Okay. Here's a big bag of crowned kinglets.
Many songbirds are saved by the FLAP program, but many more aren't. Hundreds of millions of birds die annually in collisions with buildings.
940. 4062.
4062, got it.
122. 915.
Of the 167 species FLAP collected, 20 were species at risk. FLAP's work was instrumental in creating a legal precedent in Canada.
It is now illegal that if you knowingly are killing birds, in significant numbers, knowingly killing birds as a result of light reflecting off of your building, you are breaking the law.
Developers and owners are obliged to make their buildings safe for migrating songbirds.
Key to trying to prevent this from occurring is you have to put markers on glass that have a certain amount of contrast and density. You have to create what's called visual noise. You have to put markers on that glass that alerts them to the presence of that glass. We're tracking this particular application at roughly 70% reduction. We were picking up anywhere from 500 to 1,000 birds a year just from these 2 buildings. With a 70% reduction, that's a tremendous number of birds' lives being spared.
Marked glass is a proven solution for birds who encounter buildings during the day. But as the sun sets, these same buildings become dangerous once more, drawing birds to lights like moths to the flame. Over the past century, the level of artificial light pollution has skyrocketed around the world. While light is essential for us to see at night, are we somehow making it more dangerous for songbirds to migrate?
We're in the peak of bird migration in New York City. Tonight is a special night because of this tribute in light. This memorial to September 11th that sees 2 very powerful beams of light go up into the sky. And that light is so powerful that it confuses birds. That can be deadly.
A couple birds up very high in the beams.
There was a medium-sized passerine up there, probably a thrush type. This is the Bill Evans Special. It's a pretty cool tool of the trade. Hopefully we'll get a little more information to identify what the species are. If large numbers of birds are attracted and are not leaving the area where these lights are and starting to descend closer and closer to the lights, we are able to shut the lights off. bird. Oh, very low bird there. They are sticking around the beam quite a lot. There are certainly enough birds up there to warrant being worried. Hey, Susan, there's a bird on the deck who was flying around right at ground level.
Around here in this area?
Yeah, it was just in this sort of zone right here. Yeah, it could be in the lights. Go take a look. Yeah, I think it's time to pull the plug. Birds are down pretty low here.
We're gonna leave it on for 5 more minutes.
We have to do it now.
It's a simple idea. Cities can turn off lights when there are large numbers of migrating birds predicted to fly through. But how to predict the timing and size of bird migration?
Birdcast is a collaboration between ornithologists and computer scientists, and its goal is to predict bird migration. It's really about combining weather data, bird distribution, acoustic information, trying to understand how all of those things fit together to tell us what species are going to show up next week.
Birdcast starts with Cornell University's eBird, an interface for birdwatchers to upload names and photos of birds they spot in the wild. It's one of the largest biodiversity data resources in existence. Any given week, thousands of independent bird reports tell Farnsworth what species are on the move. Then weather data tells him when the birds might take off. Birds like to fly with the wind at their backs, which means they wait for the passage of cold fronts and low pressure centers.
So when you're behind, winds are coming out of the north and the west in the fall, the air is cool, humidity level's lower, big cue for birds to take off. There's potential to say to municipalities, okay, there's going to be a big migration over a couple of nights in the next week. Could you please make an effort to turn lights out on certain buildings on these nights? In the short term, are there ways that we can start to change people's behavior immediately with this kind of information? Absolutely.
Years ago, it would have been impossible to imagine that common, everyday songbirds could ever disappear from the landscape. Today, for some of these species, 85% of their annual deaths are occurring during migration.
Of course, we could say, we're seeing a slow, progressive decline. Maybe it will weaken and stop at some point. But I think we have to be very, very attentive, because we don't know when it will hit the point of no return.
At the Max Planck Institute for Ornithology in Germany, scientists are paying extremely close attention to the decline of songbirds. It was here, over 100 years ago, that researchers first started to experiment with bird banding.
But our questions are the same as in the past. We want to know where birds go, where they live, where they die.
New technologies are now providing answers to those very questions.
I will put a GPS on here. I need to connect it to my computer. Good.
Tiny backpacks equipped with a GPS are placed on the birds, capturing precious information about the birds' daily movements. But if the birds are not recaptured and the backpacks not recovered, this information will be lost. Radio receivers help scientists track the birds from the ground or the air.
Bernd, hörst du ihn noch? Kannst du die Lautstärke mal regeln?
Hör nichts.
Du hörst nichts?
Gar nichts, kein Signal, ist nichts da.
Oh,
Immer
Merde.
höher.
Ich habe noch 2 Minuten Flugzeit.
Ui.
Warte mal.
Das ist insofern, im Moment ist es
At the moment, our classic radio telemeter devices can just about follow the birds. But in truth, we know very, very little about what happens to the birds during migration and at their wintering sites. And that's what we want to understand. We want to migrate with the birds, follow the birds, and observe them wherever they are. That's what Icarus will allow us to do.
Icarus is a new technology that uses small electronic devices to obtain information via the space station. It's decrypted there and sent back to us. Then it's fed into a worldwide database that everyone can consult. With it, we can see exactly what the animal is doing at any moment. That's it. Then we attach the tag to the top. These we use for tags.
Scientists will soon be able to follow an individual songbird wherever it flies, in real time, minute to minute, without ever leaving their laboratory. They'll do this thanks to a network of satellites and the development of incredibly powerful radio transmitters and batteries that weigh less than a nickel.
So this tag has to communicate with an antenna on the space station in about 400-kilometer distance. And you can imagine this is, I mean, over this distance it's easy, but 400 kilometers is a large distance, so it's a complex issue. Also, the key is that we can at least start with the larger songbirds, thrushes, starlings, cuckoos, to follow them around the world. And therefore, it has to be smaller than 5 grams, so that's an absolute limit. But obviously, we want to have it down to a gram.
The most important question scientifically, but also in terms of environmental protection, is to know where the animals are dying. Because if we understand that, then we'll understand the risks for any given population, whether it's skyscrapers, Mediterranean weather, sandstorms in the Sahara, or animal traps in the Mediterranean, Sudan, and Sahel. What factors are affecting the survival of the majority of individuals in a population? That will tell us how and where to protect these animals, and then to increase their numbers so that we see these birds migrating once again.
Finally, after weeks of exhausting flying, those who survive the journey arrive in their tropical wintering grounds. They aren't mere visitors. Warblers, thrushes and robins are just as at home amongst the palm trees as they are in the conifers of the north.
I remember that just like joking with other friends from other countries, US or Canada, like, no, they're your birds, no, they're mine birds, no, they're your birds, they're mine birds. And we ended up saying, no, they're our birds.
Ornithologist Martinez Salinas gathers data from returning birds and gives them a physical checkup.
It's a mourning warbler. It's a male. The female won't have the black beak, so we know just by looking at it that it's a male. And it's also a recapture, so it has already a band on one of its legs. So I just found that band. It was caught the first time in teak, in a teak site in February 2013. What's amazing that it came back to the same place too. It not only came back to Central America, but it came back to Costa Rica, and in Costa Rica to Cartago, to Rialba, and then in Turrialba, it came back to the Cacho farm. And within the Cacho farm, which is like 1,000 hectares, it came back to the same tea plantation when we caught it in February 2013. So that's what they call site fidelity.
Many songbirds return to the same places year after year because generations of evolution tell them to. Most of these birds have evolved to depend on a local set of distinct environmental features, like plants, soil, temperature, and food. What is known as a habitat. Without its habitat, a songbird cannot survive. But are these very habitats now in danger?
We keep having problems with deforestation and fragmentation, and that's profoundly affecting the viability of a lot of these populations. We used to have a lot of wood thrushes in some of our forests, and now you don't get to hear them that often as you used to. Something is happening. Definitely, there are many different signs, and we should pay attention to some of these signs because they're definitely saying something.
Songbirds are amongst the most common birds on the planet. There are billions of them. But many of these common birds have lost half their populations in the past 4 decades. What will happen to the birds if this trend continues? And what will happen to the Earth itself if the birds, vital to the complex ecosystems that sustain life, are no longer there?